Hello, and welcome to another episode of MOJO, the meaning of life and business. A lot of times we think that we're stuck. We think that there's something causing us to be stuck, something that is making us say, well, I'm not worthy. I'm not in a position to really grow. I'm not in a position to do a lot in terms of what I'm trying to do. And we run into these problems from time to time because of different thoughts that may be in our head going back many years. And I've got a really incredible guest with us today who's going to help us dissect what it is that actually may be causing those problems so you're not stuck for the reasons you think you are, and how we can also try and figure out how can we work around those issues in terms of what we're doing. Before I bring my guest on, though, let me tell you a little bit about her so you know why she's so incredible and why she's somebody that I wanted to have this conversation with on this episode. Gail Kauranen Jones, known as Coach Gail Jones, is a nationally recognized worthiness coach featured on TV, radio, and is a guest writer for Maria Shriver's Sunday paper and an executive contributor to Brainz Magazine. She's the author of 2 books, Cancer as a Love Story, Developing the Mindset for Living, and To Hell and Back, Healing Your Way Through Transition. Her cancer healing journey played a key role in rebranding her business around worthiness, for she learned that claiming one's worthiness to live can extend longevity. Gail, that's an incredible bio, and thank you so much for coming on the show.
Well, thank you for sharing that bio. I really appreciate it. You really covered all the pieces of how worthiness is developed and what I want to share about teaching it to others.
Absolutely. Thank you. And so, Gail, let me ask you, before we jump into worthiness and reasons that we're stuck, there's a lot of things that I just mentioned in your bio, though. Tell us something, though, that wasn't in your bio that is Gail.
Okay, I think that we all have different adversities in our lives, and our challenge is to transform that adversity into a service. So when I look back at my healing journey, whether it's cancer or whatever, I know that my worthiness, teaching the worthiness, came from my not having worthiness, right? We teach what we need to learn. And I grew up with a schizophrenic mom, so I never got the nurturing of those first 7 years that are key to developing nurturing. But we always have a choice whether to be a victim or to turn that around. And I feel it's my calling to teach other people how to instill that worthiness so they don't live with the pain of life as an unworthy person. It's very painful to live feeling unworthy.
Without a question, self-worth, self-esteem, feeling that one's place in the world is one's place and not that they're just relegated to being, as the old saying goes, chopped liver. Right. It's extremely important, and too many people, unfortunately, discover that too late in life, that they really weren't living what they could have lived, the life that they could have lived, simply because they were afraid, because they were dealing with thoughts from when they were in their formative years, that they weren't taught, like you were saying, self-worth.
Right.
So as we look, though, at that self-worth and we look at issues that are surrounding it, we know that from birth to 6, 7 years of age, we know that that is the formative years. We know that a lot of the thoughts, even about money, come in that time. One of the things that I've shared in the past is that if you are seeing your parents always flipping out about money, and they were always concerned, and I can't spend it here, I can't spend it here, you're going to have the same mindset of missing the money. Not that it's
Right.
in
We,
plenty.
we, we inherit our parents' mindsets on money often, but I want to go back to those first 6 years and just say, when we revisit them to rewire our brains for worthiness, which is what I help clients do, I actually help reparent them for those first 6 years. The most important thing for people to know, this is done with love and compassion, not judgment. We didn't have the discernment skills as young children, 0 to 6, to know this wasn't about me. So for example, when my mom wasn't paying attention to me and that made me feel less than, I didn't know as a little kid that she was mentally ill. So I made it about me, right? So it's really important. Love and compassion heals. And the other thing to understand is that to heal worthiness, you can read all the books, all the self-help books, you can go to all the seminars, but you have to be lovingly witnessed. So in coaching, when I witness someone one-on-one and I'm giving them love and compassion as they share all the trauma drama, we don't stay there, but they've held it in their whole lives. They were good kids, right? They were good kids to survive what they survived. They have to be seen, heard, validated, and acknowledged for the pain. We don't stay there, we move forward fast, but you can't forget that, the love and compassion piece and being witnessed by a competent adult.
So when we think about then the times that we were hoping as kids to have had that acknowledgement, that parenting that we wanted, unfortunately, we've seen some student athletes over the years not be in a position for them to deal with all of the issues that are thrown at them being student athletes, being thrown at them being kids in school. The pandemic has been an issue. And we were talking about this in the green room earlier, Gail. How can we look at these kids and really start shaping a difference for the future in terms of what we're looking at for the kids out there now? I'm thinking about my own kids.
Great question. So the first thing I would say is, as parents, we need to be honoring our kids for who they are, not what they do. All their performance does not make them worthy. And even as adults in the working world, you get great accolades. I was on national TV, national radio. That does not make me worthy. Worthy comes from within. And especially now with the challenging world circumstances, if we focus on the circumstances, we can go down very fast. When we have an innate sense of worthiness, we are grounded no matter what's happening around us. And the most important message parents can give young children, all children, but especially those 0 to 6, is loving them for who they are unconditionally. And loving them for who they are isn't like, oh, you got an A on your report card, or you made a great friend. It's like, I love you because you're so kind. I love you because you're playful. I love your spirit. Find qualities about your child that you love that aren't based on performance, that are a reflection of their essence.
So the tiger moms probably would be a little less in favor of the ideas that you're sharing now, given that it's grades and the music or whatever it is that they're getting their kids to.
Right.
So if you were working with a tiger mom, I'm imagining you would try and help her see the same idea. But very often tiger moms are living with the same because that's what their parents were.
Right. And that's where we have to be very loving and forgiving, because we're only parenting how we were parented. And I feel this whole platform around worthiness is breaking generational wounds. None of us were given it because our parents weren't given it, right? And their parents weren't given it. Now you have the ability to establish a strong foundation of worthiness, knowing how to do it, and also high self-esteem for kids. But the number one thing I would say to all parents and all of us, even as professionals in the business world, the greatest gift you can give somebody is your presence, okay? When you can actually sit and listen. And I'll just share an example of what happens. And I know we're all dealing with the social media age and the challenges of that, but I've heard so many stories of a parent goes to pick up a child from daycare, right? In the older days, the kid would come running to the parents, so excited to see them after being in daycare all day. That excitement isn't there anymore for a lot of kids because everybody's so distracted. The worst thing a parent can do if they go to pick up their child from daycare or the kid comes home from school and you're on your cell phone, right? And you continue talking on that cell phone, what you're telling your child in that moment. And this is how beliefs are formed, these subconscious beliefs from the first 6 years of life that run us for life, is they don't matter. Put down the phone and be present. And it takes conscious effort to do that, especially now. And I have a lot of empathy for parents because I can't imagine being parents of young children right now, in the challenging times of the pandemic at the time this is being recorded. And also, we're seeing a lot of data coming in on how it is impacting young children, and it's not being widely reported. But parents need support too. So we need to love parents and see them as worthy as well as them giving it to their children.
And that's really powerful if you think about it. It's all about what are you doing to show those around you, your children, fellow parents, people in your workplace, that it is all about showing them they're worthy. And it's amazing how sometimes that little bit of going out of your way to show someone that you actually care about them can have such an amazing impact.
Right.
And
I just want to repeat these four key words that make somebody feel worthy, helps them feel worthy: to be seen, heard, validated, and acknowledged. I said it at the beginning, but when you're present to somebody, you are seeing them, you are validating them, you are acknowledging them, you are making them feel valued. And it means stepping out of whatever is going on in your life now to be present. I keep on going back to the presence. It's so missing today. We all want to be seen, and especially because of people being so isolated, to be seen and really look eye to eye and feel somebody's heart. That takes some discipline. And for parents that are, running in all different circles right now, for them to have somebody be present to them, I can't imagine the choices some of them have to make on a daily basis, but to have them experience that presence, that'll automatically elevate their sense of worthiness so they can model it for their children.
Gail, let me ask you, one of the things that you mentioned earlier is that you learn what you need to learn.
Right.
And you teach what you need to learn.
Right. And
the worthiness around your cancer diagnosis and the recovery process, and thank God, I hope that everything is better and will stay that way. But in terms of realizing that there was an issue to begin with, because so many people doesn't matter if it's about worthiness, if it's about needing help in another area, we're just too embarrassed very often to admit that we need help. So the question is, if you were talking with any of our listeners and you were really getting inside of their mind and you were making them question, do I consider myself worthy? What would be some of the questions that they would even need to be asking themselves to figure out, do I really consider myself worthy? Yes, like you said, being on national TV, but that doesn't mean worthy. That's just based on the accolade.
Right.
So what would I need to be thinking about to know if I am seeing myself as worthy, or maybe I need that help too?
Right. So I just want to say one thing, going back to the cancer diagnosis, is that on the outside, again, I looked really successful, but on the inside, I was running on fight or flight my whole life, having had a schizophrenic mom, right? So my body just broke down. It just couldn't take any more of that run. It had to stop. So I just want to share that it's going inward. In order to claim your worthiness, you absolutely must go inward and understand nothing outside of you is going to give that to you. Nothing, not a mate, not a job, not money, not the perfect home. You have to go within and claim it. But how we know we're not in worthiness, and this, a lot of it, I mean, 90% of my clients have been men once, but I think women are more conditioned to give to others at the expense of themselves. So key ways to know you're in unworthiness are that you overgive and think you have to give to get. We are worthy as is. We don't have to do anything to get something. So women tend to overgive. In relationship, you tend to attract takers if you're unworthy, because you haven't learned to receive. So one of the key things I would say is to practice receiving. And this relates to business as well, because if you can't receive, and again, when you're conditioned to give to others, which a lot of women are, especially mothers, it's a whole new ballgame to learn to receive. And it's uncomfortable when you first learn. But if you don't learn to receive, you will not receive money. It could be right in your face and you'll push it away. Oh, I don't need to do that, or I can give a free seminar, or so you're paid your worth when you know your worthiness. You set a limit on what you know what you're worth, and you ask for what you're worth. The other way it plays out, and I know when we have an unworthiness issue that a lot of us hide in shame. For a long time I was felt shame that I had a schizophrenic mom. Like, nobody came to my house. That was like off the charts. No way. And then I had to become more visible to do my business. And so I had to walk through a lot of shame to do that, and be worthy to stand there and share the message, independent of what you thought about my earlier years or whatever. So being visible is key to being worthy. But I want to say it's a fine line, because I think some people are visible to the extreme. I think it has to be with authenticity, to be visible with authenticity, that you're there to share a message. You're not visible to just take a stage, and which I've seen a lot happen in my profession, but you're visible because you have a message to share that comes from your heart, and you're standing there sharing that message because you've done the work. You have to have done the work to stand up there and share the message and to guide others through the journey. So I'd say it shows up in relationship, it shows up in money, it shows up in giving to get. And the visibility, I'll just share one thing on the visibility. I do a lot of work with vision boards, but I do them based on neuroscience. I'm trained in neuroscience. So when you're creating a new vision board for your business or your personal life or both, you want to have a picture on that vision board of yourself smiling and happy. You want to be happy in your vision. But you also, this is my little thing I add, this is my secret that I'm sharing with your listeners, to have a picture of yourself as a child 3 to 5, because that child needs to know that they are worthy to be in that vision and that you're going to make them feel safe. So even before I went on TV, the doctors, that Emmy award-winning show, as much as I felt confident in my message, I had to reassure my little girl within, who didn't get that nurturing the first 5 years, that I was going to make her feel safe. No matter what happened on the show, it wasn't about the show, but she was going to feel safe being visible. I was going to love her no matter what. And that she was worthy of doing this journey with me. So I think we have to make a relationship with our inner child, the rest of our lives, to reassure. We're reparenting that child constantly. Even if we had a great childhood, we have an inner child within us that needs to always be told they're worthy, and we're listening and we're acknowledging and we're valuing them. Does that make sense?
It absolutely makes sense. And so much of what you were just saying has struck way too many chords to even begin to count. Just to share a really quick story. Sure. There was maybe about 9-10 years ago, there was an event. I eventually spoke at that event, but the speaker that was at this particular event, about 4 months or so before I was supposed to be speaking at a similar program, she was at that time nearly 9 months pregnant. And she was, in the beginning, I missed when she was setting up the room, how she wanted the room set up. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the program, everyone else had left, and I had stuck around, and I'm sitting there thinking, all right, there's this woman who's about to go into labor any day. And she's going around to all the tables, collecting her flowers and her vases and all the marbles that she dropped in and whatever else was on the tables for her. And I said, this is ridiculous. Let me go around. I can help. And certainly not expecting anything in return. But it was while I was going through my divorce. And so there was a lot of emotion just to begin with. And when you're in divorce, you never want to get, because it's usually not something good. But while I was going through that process of divorce, I helped this woman, and today we're good friends. Didn't know her from Adam then.
Wow.
But when I was helping her at the end, she said, listen, she had a gift card that she wanted to give me for an hour massage. She told me she wanted to give it to me, and that the only condition was that I had to agree to use it on myself, not to gift it to someone else. And I just broke down in front of a complete stranger at the time. And it was one of those experiences that here I was, everything in divorce, between the filings and the complaints and everything that you're dealing with, you're made to feel less than whole.
Absolutely.
And here she was, no reason other than saying thank you, but a simple thank you for me would have sufficed. Giving that to me and just completely breaking down. And it was one of the few times that I really did break down like that in front of a complete stranger. 9/11 was probably the other big time. But other than these national times, it was really a lot less. But so when you were talking about the giving and getting and the other areas that you were mentioning with how to really know that there's a sense of worth, really just struck many, many chords. And I just thought that I should mention that, because if anyone out there, and if you are listening and you felt the same way, I would strongly suggest that you see what you can figure out in terms of your worth, or else reach out to Coach Gail, and we'll let you know in a little bit how you can reach out to Coach Gail. But let's go on, though, to the conversation.
I just want to say something on your beautiful story that you shared. So that was a defining moment in learning how to receive. So what I would suggest to you, or anybody who has that first moment or a couple moments, first of all, is to write it down. So when we track evidence of knowing we're worthy, it takes 20 seconds to create a new neural pathway in the brain. So no matter whether we're 20, 50, 60, whatever, we have to rewire our brain for the new. So if we track evidence of when we know we're worthy, even if it feels awkward, okay, receiving is part of worthiness, right? If you wrote down, today I got this massage certificate for what I did, and even though it was hard to accept, I accepted it, and keep on tracking evidence of ways you receive. You're going to train the brain to receive. It's going to feel uncomfortable at first because you didn't, but you just explained it beautifully. So thank you for sharing that story. That's an excellent example of rewiring your brain for worthiness. And I'm not surprised you would break down, because you were creating a new story. You just broke the story of your past in that moment by accepting that gift.
Thank you.
Yeah, a lot of courage to break these stories.
Without a question, you have to, as I always say, in order to grow, there has to be change. You can't sit still and expect to grow and expect to be anything different than what you were yesterday. And so change is absolutely necessary. And like you're saying, writing down those moments, figuring out those moments are really important. So let's look, though, at the business side when we're stuck. there's a lot of issues that are out there that
Right.
make us stuck, that
Right.
we can't seem to see the forest for the trees and
Right.
what we're dealing with.
Right.
What are some of the issues, though, in that regard? I mean, the worthiness is, of course, a major component,
Right.
but how do we start seeing that and start admitting, whether in a business perspective, in a personal perspective, that we really need to be looking at, well, something isn't working and we need to deal with it?
Right. Well, first of all, I want to say, because we are living in these times of the pandemic, moving through, we're in the process of creating a new world. So the old paradigms don't work, the old thinking doesn't work, the old beliefs don't work. So it's common right now for people to feel stuck. Okay, it's very common because who we were a couple of years ago isn't who we are now. And the whole model of what we're going to need to go forward is very different. So I think that the first thing to do is to honor we all have unique gifts to bring to this new world unfolding. And a couple common themes that are really important are authenticity. So when we're stuck, I would ask ourselves, where are we not being authentic? Like sometimes, we're in a role that might have been a role that fit us in our 20s, but it doesn't fit us in our 40s. Is this still the role for me? Is this really authentic to who my soul wants me to be right now? So authenticity, I was right up there. And then another is connectedness. So I don't know if you're familiar with Adam Grant. He's a business psychologist, but he says the companies that are going to thrive are going to be the ones that recognize belonging is key. So another question I would ask when I'm stuck is, where do I belong? I might not belong in a corporate structure anymore, or I might not even belong being an entrepreneur anymore, or I might belong being a mom because I'll always be a mom, but I might not belong with the moms I'm connecting with. So where do I belong? And then to answer that question, as you're asking yourself that question, I would also ask, because we're all being elevated, even though it doesn't feel like it right now. It feels like a big crash, but we're all being elevated to a bigger version of ourselves that's going to serve the new world in a new way. So we have to align with different types of people. So the other question I would ask is, who has the capacity to hold me? And I'll just share this story about capacity. It's really important. Gay Hendricks wrote the book, The Big Leap. I recommend it to everybody. I've recommended 20 years of my coaching practice. But as we elevate, people are going to go away. They don't intentionally do it, but our success threatens them subconsciously. Even people in our inner circle, even family members won't be there for us as we elevate. The story, it's lonely at the top. It is briefly until we meet new people of capacity. And who are the people that have capacity to hold us in our growth? They're going to be very different than they were before. So you want to build a tribe of people that have the capacity. I'll just share an example. Right before I was getting ready to go on national TV, I had just rebranded my worthiness after 20 years of business and worked 24/7 doing the new website and all of that. And somebody who watched me go through all of this was very supportive. And then when she saw the link to the TV show, it was during COVID, so we had to shoot it off site and send the link and all that. She said, "Oh, that's great. What are you going to do next?" Totally dismissed that I was on TV. It wasn't about the TV, totally dismissed that I'd just taken a major big leap to share my message to 4 million people. This is very common when we go up, right? And I don't mean up in an egotistical way, up in expressing our authentic selves. So you want to make sure you have a tribe that's going to be there when you go up. And even if you fail, you can go up and, everything isn't going to be hunky-dory just because you went up. So I would recommend definitely having a tribe. But when you're in your worthiness, you can't hold yourself back anymore and be small to accommodate other people. Because you're elevating, because you have a message, you have a purpose, you have something you're supposed to share with the world, and you have to honor it. You can't give your power to other people anymore. Does that make sense?
It very much makes sense. when you were talking about that experience, very often it's what did you do for me today, not what you did yesterday.
Right.
And those are the things that we're always hearing.
Right.
And so knowing that you need to have that tribe behind you, that you need to have that group of people or even one person that can be there to
Right.
have your back when the lights are out, to quote a very good friend of mine who happens to be the regional director of the Small Business Development Center here. But he knows that for me, I always have his back. I've mentioned the Small Business Development Center, and Vince, I'm calling you out again. On my show, when I've spoken, I mentioned him also when I was interviewed in a print publication. I don't remember exactly what it was right now, about who my mentors were that helped me form my vision. And so seeing how you have these people that always have your back,
Absolutely.
that is really important, because when things do go sideways, and in business we know sometimes it will,
Right.
there's absolutely nothing that is guaranteed to be a success. Even if the head of that major social media platform came out with a brand new one, or the 800-pound gorilla search engine came out with something else, it doesn't mean it's going to be a success just because they did it.
Right.
There's going to be times when things are not going to succeed, and you need to have that group of people that are going to be there to help you pick up the pieces. And it's also important to realize when things fail. The founders of Google have a quote, and I wish I remembered the actual quote, but they basically said something along the lines of they'd rather fail fast so that they can learn from their mistakes and move on than fail slowly and not be able to pivot. And it's that kind of idea, though, knowing I'd rather know that I also have the right group of people in my corner at the beginning, as opposed to finding out later on that I have people who really are in it for some other reason.
Right. So it
and
goes
not
back to
there.
Jennifer, it goes back to it goes back to the worthiness, because I think the first thing you have to know is you're worthy to ask for help. We don't have to do it alone. Okay. And you're worthy to be supported. So if you're with people that aren't supporting you, right, you're not in your worthiness, right? Why would I be with people that don't have the capacity to love me whether I sink or swim, right? So you have to reevaluate as your worthiness goes up, you have to reevaluate. And you don't, like you just said, you don't always have to be up. You want people that can hold you when you fall. That's being worthy. Because the life of an entrepreneur is a roller coaster. It's never straightforward. And you really want people to hold. So when you reach that high, yeah, that's really great. But it's much easier to find people to hold you in the low than it is to find people that hold you in the high. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't go for it. And I'll just share the other thing I share with my clients. It's like, as we elevate our sense of worthiness, right? We're born worthy, it's there, but as we reclaim it, it's kind of like an elevator. You're going up different floors and you get off and there's nobody there yet. But the new people do come. And I just reinforce that over and over again. They will come. And it feels so easy and so joyful when they do. So there's a gap, there's an empty space before between the old and the new, just like when we're letting go of a career or a relationship, there's a gap between the new career or new relationship. But it comes, and it's trusting in the unknown, but the new people always arrive. So I would encourage people to write down, what would it feel like to be with people of capacity, to hold me when I succeed, to hold me when I fall, to just love me who I am as is, not based on performance. And that goes back to what we talked about at the beginning of the interview on the mental health issues with teens and the suicides based on performance. Worthiness is being loved for who we are, not what we do.
And that's really incredible. And I want you to think about that for a second. It is easier to find people when you're lower than when you're on the upside, like Coach Gail just mentioned. Let that sink in. Find those people that you know are really going to be there, that are going to have that capacity to be with you for the highs and the lows, and start visioning what that process is going to look like and where that process can also take you, so that you can find some of those tools that you are going to be using. And I don't mean the hammer and the screw, I mean the relationships and the benefits, two ways, by the way, not just one, but having those people there that can be there for you for the highs and the lows. So, Gail, let me ask you, if somebody wanted to follow up with you and speak with you or learn more about you, how can they learn more about you and reach you?
Well, my website is claimyourworthiness.com. On LinkedIn, I'm Gail Kauranen Jones, Kauranen Jones. But I love it when people email me, gailjones@claimyourworthiness.com. I offer a 30-minute consult to people that email me, so we can see if we're in alignment. I also have a Facebook page, Coach Gail Jones, Instagram, Coach Gail Jones, and Twitter, Transition Guru.
Thank you so much, Gail. And if you're listening and this resonated with you, really give it the thought. What more can you do? What more might make sense in terms of figuring out where you are in the process of figuring out your own self-worth? And how can you also help others with their sense of self-worth? If it's simply being there to give a helpful good morning, if it's being there to be that friend and person to hold someone else up, those are all different ways. And Gail mentioned many ways that you can be looking at for yourself as well as for others, where you can go.
Jennifer, so Gail, can I share one other thing that's really key here, that the people, I hope this will be a great takeaway, especially if you have children, but especially, for yourself, but especially if you have children or colleagues or employees that you're mentoring. So I'm certified in teaching high self-esteem for children and adults and parents and educators. And the key is we are all addicted to 3 emotions, okay? And those emotions are anger. These are low vibe emotions. These are low self-esteem emotions. Anger, sadness, and I just blanked on the other, anger, sadness, or fear. Those are the 3 low vibe emotions, self-esteem. If we want to change in a moment when we're in them, and we all have one predominant one, but if we want to change in a moment and elevate our self-esteem, we want to go to 3 high self-esteem emotions: empathy, gratitude, and forgiveness. So empathy, empathy is such a strong, high vibe, high self-esteem emotion. And just, back to you, Jennifer, when you helped that woman who was 9 months pregnant, you didn't do that to get, you didn't give to get, you were expressing empathy. You were in a high self-esteem state when you helped her. You did it out of the pureness of your heart. So empathy is even like, we go to a meeting and someone mistreats us, okay? It hurts, right? But if we have empathy, we can say, instead of making it personal, we can say, I wonder what was going on in that person's life today for them to have treated me that way. So it immediately changes the story from rewiring your brain to, oh, they don't treat me well, I'm not worthy, right? But when we have empathy and we can see people that are just struggling, going through their own stuff, and you perfectly modeled it with that example of helping that woman. You had empathy of her 9 months pregnant. And if we could practice empathy on a daily basis, we can elevate our self-esteem in addition to increase our worthiness.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I want to thank you again, Gail, for being my guest on the program today. And I strongly encourage you all, reach out to Gail at claimyourworthiness.com, and everything will be in the description of the show notes for the contact to reach out to Gail. But think about what you're doing in your life today, tomorrow, and also, like Gail said, that 3-5-year-old self of where you were. That person needs to know they're worthy just because you say that they were worthy back then, because that's you. And that's going to be, that same worthiness is going to translate all the way through because they were worthy back then. Think about that. Think about where you are and how you can be helping others. Everything that we do is all about being in a position to leave our world in a better way than we found it. That means you need to be at your best in order to help other people be at their best as well. As you think about where you want to go in life, what you're looking at doing, if you're an entrepreneur today, you're thinking about being an entrepreneur tomorrow, whatever it may be, all of these ideas, all of these issues around worth, self-esteem, knowing when to ask for help and feeling that you are worthy of the help is really important in your development as a person and as an entrepreneur. But don't be ashamed. Don't be embarrassed.
Jennifer, I just have to interject something here when you just said that. It's beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Don't be ashamed and don't be embarrassed. So when we don't have an adequate sense of worthiness, which is a lot of us, right? At some point, we did nothing wrong. There's nothing to be ashamed of. We just didn't get the basic nurturance, and we're not here to beat anybody up, but we did nothing wrong. But it's never too late to rewire it in. So I'm so glad you brought that up about the shame, because so many people carry shame for something they didn't do wrong. They were little kids and didn't have the discernment skills to say, this isn't about me. This is that this person didn't have the adequate parenting style. It wasn't about me ever. So thank you for sharing that. If people can release their shame, beautiful that you mentioned that. Thank you.
Thank you. On that note, this has been another episode of MOJO, the meaning of life and business. And until next time, here's to your success.